I will begin by thanking members of the media, representatives of public bodies, and other stakeholders for coming out today's announcement. I'm joined by Sean Dutton, Deputy Minister for Service Personnel and Government Purchasing Agency. Sean, I also want to thank you for joining me today and all the work that you've done on this piece of legislation.
Thank you.
Today, a new act representing public bodies will undergo a second reading in the House of Assembly. The act representing procurement by public bodies will help modernize procurement by provincial public bodies. It will replace the Public Tendering Act, which is decades old and has not been substantially amended since it was enacted. The new legislation responds to feedback from consultations as well as report by Reed and Associates that recommended changes in 2008. For those who are unfamiliar with the current Public Tendering Act, it governs the acquisition of goods, services, public works, and leasing of space by government-funded bodies in the province. It is an important legislation because it influences buying by all public bodies, including municipalities, health boards, school boards, academic institutions, crown corporations, and government. The Act influences a lot of economic activity in the province. A recent Atlantic Province Economic Council study noted provincial government procurement and capital spending totaled $4 billion combined in 2014. This large volume of buying activities shows how important of having a procurement process that achieves the best value for dollars spent. Our goal in modernizing procurement was to shift the focus from just getting the best price to getting the best value. The key benefits of this bill include promoting enhanced oversight and transparency, providing greater flexibility to help public bodies purchase what they need, increasing consistency in procurement practices used by public bodies across the province, limiting exemptions for NELCOR and the Research Development Corporation, and creating the opportunity to update the thresholds governing buying activity. I want to take this opportunity to talk about each one of these in a little greater detail. With respect to promoting enhanced oversight and transparency, this new act will see the Government Purchasing Agency become the Public Procurement Agency. This change is meant to increase focus on the agency's strengthened role in providing oversight over procurement by all public bodies. As part of this, a Chief Procurement Officer role and a Procurement Advisory Council will be established to oversee all public procedure activities across the province. The Chief Procurement Officer will be selected through the Independent Appointments Commission process. The Advisory Council will be comprised of officials from provincial public bodies. In addition, professional services that were previously not included in the Public Tender Act will now be subject to greater oversight than ever before. This includes engineering services, architectural services, accounting, land surveying, voice telephone services, most banking services, insurance services, and many other services that were previously not included. This enhanced oversight will help us ensure the best value from the money public bodies spend on these services in the future. I am pleased to note that this new act will allow our government to put new legislation and policies in place in the coming months. These regulations and policies will make the procurement process more transparent for vendors and allow public bodies more opportunity to hold suppliers accountable for their performance. This act would also provide greater flexibility in the way public bodies purchase what they need. The previous approach encouraged tenders over requests for proposals, RFPs. The new act will make it easier to use additional approaches such as RFPs and calls of expressions of interest. This new act will also increase consistency in procurement practices, specifically in terms of the timelines used for procurement process, the sharing of information between buyers and suppliers, and the application of procurement policies. This new act will promote greater consistency in the approach used by all public bodies. The new Act will also limit exemptions for NALCOR and the Research and Development Corporation. Procurement activities by those entities, such as buying office space, supplies, and furnishings, were not within the scope of the legislation before, but now are included. NALCOR exemptions are now limited to the following situations: procurement involving energy and energy products, strategic partnership, joint ventures, or equity investments with other public bodies or private sectors entities, or to meet the requirements of a benefits agreement. The Research and Development Corporation exemptions is limited to procurement for research and development purposes unrelated to daily operations. These exemptions are necessary and responsive to the nature of the work carried out by these entities. I want to note that public reporting will be required on any of the exempted activities I mentioned. Finally, this Act includes the benefit of creating the opportunity to update the thresholds government buying activity. As Minister of Municipal Affairs, I'm very aware that this has been a concern for many communities in our province. Many representatives from public bodies stated in consultations that the current thresholds for requiring an open call for bids are too low. This increases the red tape involved in small-scale procurement and prevents public bodies from being able to buy locally. The new Act creates opportunities to respond to those issues through regulatory changes that will allow government to increase thresholds and address these problems. Establishing this new Act is a vital step in the process of modernizing public procurement in Newfoundland and Labrador. Next steps would include selecting a chief procurement officer, finalizing regulations and policy, and training buyers and vendors. We anticipate this work will take over the course of 2017. Our process is informed by extensive research and consultation and will keep stakeholders and the public aware of our progress as it takes place. Before I conclude, I want to note that my day's announcement of government delivery is delivering a new procurement act within 6 months of the launch of the Way Forward vision, just as we promised. The Way Forward, a vision for sustainability and growth in Newfoundland and Labrador, sets ambitious long-term goals to improve our province while addressing fiscal realities and provides tangible actions to achieve these goals. You can see the vision guidelines principles in this bill. We will do better with less. With new legislation and a new procurement framework, we will achieve better value, more transparency, and better oversight than ever before. We will collaborate. This legislation and framework were developed from the consultations with buyers and vendors. We will challenge ourselves. We wanted to produce legislation and a procurement framework that was in keeping with the best practices across Canada, and we have achieved that. As Premier Ball noted a few weeks ago, our vision is focused on 4 areas: achieving a more efficient public sector, building a stronger economic foundation, providing better services, supporting better outcomes. By modernizing procurement to achieve best value for a dollar spent, I'm proud to say that we have delivered in each of these 4 areas.